this was once a huge bay teeming with wildlife, and but then the gold rush came and they filled it all up except for the channel, which we are on, which is all that's left.
That was Mission Creek houseboat resident Ginny Stearns. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from environmentalists, photographers, bartenders, and other San Franciscans, telling stories, sharing personal histories, and trying to put into words what makes this city so special. Welcome to episode 26, part 2. In part 1, Ginny and her husband, Bob Isaacson, talked about their various efforts to preserve and protect the environment around Mission Creek. In this podcast, they expound on some of that work, including 2 books that Bob took part in putting together. They tell the story of how they met and Ginny's move to Mission Creek. And they end the podcast with Bob's reflection on how the houseboat community has been beneficial to the environment around the creek. Toward the end of the episode, you'll hear Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast asking the couple how they met. Here's Bob and Ginny.
And I just want to say that Bob's work with the redevelopment agency gave him skills that were very useful for us at the creek, as far as knowing how to communicate and work with the agencies, and produce it in quadruplicate, and to sound reasonable. And so he was very, very instrumental in helping us get a lease with the port. And also all this work with the various agencies of development. So,
yeah, I drafted the lease with the port, and the goal was to not have them, to have us and them separate. So we run the harbor ourselves. We have an association. We run the harbor, and we pay them 40% of our rental income. And I drafted that lease and brought it over to the port, and it was approved with almost no change. But having worked for the redevelopment agency, I understood what was important on both sides, and our independence to me was important.
Absolutely. That would have been in 1989, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. It was approved in 89. We submitted it to them probably 10 years before that, but they weren't agreed that we should stay.
They are a government agency after all, so it just takes bureaucracy.
Yeah, right.
But you got it. But they approved it in 89. It's 30 years ago. And Sarah told me something about how long the lease is.
2055.
Right.
I'll be 125 years old. Yeah.
Hey, we'll be here for your birthday party then.
Be interesting to see what's going to happen then, because 2055 is right when the city has to make some serious decisions about how they're going to deal with sea level rise, because this is one of the lowest areas of the city. And so they actually invited some Dutch engineers to come out and make some suggestions about how to protect all these, fabulous new buildings of Mission Bay. So by then, the water's going to really start rising, and they've got to do it. So that is going to be just about the same time our lease is up. So it's hard to know just exactly what's going to happen to us and them.
Yeah, it shouldn't affect the creek, affect us too much, because we just go up and down with the tide.
Right.
They've got to do something on the shore,
The land.
but yeah,
Submerged.
yeah, we just rise with the tide.
So they're thinking about, shall we put in some tidal gates to prevent the water from, which might work, but it also will cost a lot of money, or do we just shut off the creek altogether and turn it into a park or something else? So it could really be interesting to see what they decide, and we'll be in there as part of those decisions if we can.
I think the buildings on both sides of the shore are going to be a major factor. Yeah. If the
right out here.
If the water's going to get above the shoreline, that's where the major decision is going to be, rather than with us.
I'm reading something else happened that year. You guys got married.
Yep.
in 89.
Yeah.
There was also an earthquake that I've heard about a little bit. So, very eventful year. Very
We missed the whole thing. We were in London. We saw it on TV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you had to just kind of hope that everything was okay?
No.
Yeah, well, we heard from people
my
here.
son lives down. He's got a houseboat down here too. So I called him and he was okay.
So that's quite an eventful year for you all. I'm also noticing, and I assume this is you, Bob, that you published a few things.
Yes. Yeah. 2 books.
Oh, 2 books.
Yeah. Do you have them?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of these are both published by the Conservancy, and one of them is called Vanished Waters, and it's the whole story of the Mission Bay. And so this was once a huge bay teeming with wildlife, and but then the gold rush came and they filled it all up except for the channel, which we are on, which is all that's left.
Right.
We published this in part because we wanted people who move into this area to know that it was once very different here. And so it's got a lot of pictures on it and some very interesting maps that Mission Creek once was navigable up to Mission Dolores, and also up to, water came down from Twin Peaks, and there were, daily tidal waters that went up as far as Mission Street. So it's, and all around through, say, around 14th and Valencia and so forth, there's still Mission Creek waters burbling away under there.
I think 17th and Folsom still is prone to flooding.
Yes,
For that
that's right.
creek bed.
Yes.
And this is all named down here. It's named Mission Creek, Mission
Yes.
Bay, because of that connection that it had to Mission Dolores, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a hand in writing these?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I basically wrote Mission Creek, San Francisco. I had somebody else help me, and Nancy Olmsted wrote Vanished Waters.
Yeah.
But it was we commissioned it.
Yeah. Writing a book. I mean, again, with your kind of seaman and engineering background, it's a little different, right? Writing a book.
Yeah, the Ed Buren is a photographer who was a friend of Jack Davis's, and he'd taken some wonderful pictures of the creek, and I thought they really need to be, published. Mm-hmm. So that's what Mission Creek, San Francisco came from. It was mainly built around those, and then a lot of excerpts from people around who lived here and stuff like that. That made the book. Yeah.
You mentioned Corinne, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my first time to hear her name. Can we talk a little bit about
Oh,
who
really?
she was?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm still learning about you guys' little community down here. So who?
She was our Secretary of State, and she made connections with the port, with the developers, and with all the different projects going around here. And she went to all the meetings and spoke on our behalf, but also on things that she wanted to see, like the Blue Greenway, which is sort of a walking trail that goes all up and down the east side over here. And she was a formidable presence at all of these meetings and so forth. So she passed away recently, and we're all just sort of realizing how many connections she had and what a huge impact she had on all the decisions around the ballpark. Sort of making sure that the traffic was going to move and, just all these things. And she would report to us regularly, but now we have to do what we can to keep those connections going.
How do you feel about this?
The traffic is the worst thing. Traffic and parking is almost impossible now. I don't like to walk too much, so I drove my car down about a block and a half down to go to a cafe. I couldn't park. I had to come back here and park and walk. So the parking and the traffic are a problem. As far as the building and people, not a problem at all. It's just the traffic and the parking is all. We know some very nice people in the apartments.
Oh, good. So do you feel like there is I don't want to say assimilation, but that there's like a sense of kind of community or living together. People are respectful of the houseboats by and large.
We know very few people actually. In the the people that I know are fine, but we're mainly an independent community here, rather than integrated into the community on both sides. But I'm not sure how much of a community they are. I'm not sure that people in apartment buildings get together.
Right.
That's the reason I bought a houseboat. I was living out at Hunters Point, and I had to move. Not I had to. They raised. I was paying market rent because but I moved there because I was with a redevelopment agency and I wanted to kind of see what it was like to be in it. So I was paying market rent. Then in order to get more money out of it, they raised the market rent way above what it really should have been. So I didn't want to pay that, so I moved out, and I thought that moving into an apartment would be like moving into a closet. So I decided to buy a houseboat, which I did.
Did you know anyone down here already, or?
No, I had a friend who was looking at buying a houseboat, and that was the inspiration. So I came down, looked, and there was one. I paid $16,800, I think, for the little thing that I bought. Yeah, it was great. It was wonderful. But when I got together with Jenny, we needed more room, so I had this one built. But even this cost $100,000. It's worth over $1 million, well over $1 million now. Yeah.
How does one go about? Sarah talked a little bit about what her dad went through to get her current home built. How do you find?
Well, I had actually Jack and Keith Oakford were two guys from down here who were builders, and they basically built a boat for me.
This one that we're on?
Yeah, right,
wow.
Right.
That's one way to do it, I guess.
Yeah, down here, yeah. Some other people, came in. One guy, another local guy, I forget who it was, did the electricity. But it was basically Jack and Keith. I had never built anything before. I build a lot now, most of the stuff up in Mendocino I've been building by myself. But this is where I learned, just by watching them.
You guys seem very happy living here.
Yeah.
I, for one, am jealous.
It's really changed. I mean, we were the only things happening in this neighborhood for quite a long time, and now it's quite different, and we have I'd say a population of people who are very different from, who live very differently than we have. I mean, a lot of people down here work with their hands, or they're building things, or artists, and that's really hard to do in an apartment. And they also have to come up with incredible amounts of money to live there. So they're, I think, very busy working. Although we do have we do have people who come down and work with us on projects on the taking care of the banks and so forth. So it's nice to have that interchange and, looking at birds together. And so it's different. Although now we have a lot more things. We have a library now at the end of down there, and more shops and restaurants, and Gus's just opened, which was really changed things as far as having so now it's only a block away for some really good food.
How did you two meet, and then how did you feel about moving on to a houseboat?
Well, let's see. When I was living my Dolores Park place, the neighbor wanted to put up some condos, and so we wanted to shape that. So I was going around to other neighborhood organizations trying to get support for that, and I wound up at this neighborhood coalition meeting, and there was this man there who was talking about birds at Mission Creek. And
I forget why I was there, but I went around to all the neighborhood coalition meetings. It's for a time there was. I forget why now. I don't even remember. But
well, you wanted to get support for the wildlife here.
Yeah, right.
And so forth and so on.
Yeah,
So
that's where we met. Yeah.
So moving down here, I didn't have any trouble. Let's see. Well, it was kind of hard to give up having an private outdoor space like a garden. But then I really like living on the water where there's so much wildlife, and you just never know every day. You know, when the herring come in, suddenly there's all these sea lions and pelicans and cormorants, and so it can get pretty exciting what's with everything going after all these fish, and just getting used to just being able to identify little ripples. Is that a bat ray? Is that a cormorant? Is that a scaup? Is that a grebe? And just there's so much going on that's coming and going that
when we were dealing with the Mission Bay Development Group, the Catellis and those guys, we were talking to the head guy. I forget his name now, and he came, invited him here, and a great egret flew right across the back porch. He looked at it. He said, "Oh, that's real." They were over there, and we've been talking, about preserving the wildlife and so on. They thought we made it all up.
And after it all got done, Bob had a great idea. Let's throw a party and thank them. So we invited them all down to the houseboat. At that time, we had the wall covered with photos of all the different birds that are down here. And they all looked at those and they said, "Are all those birds from around here?" And I mean, they really didn't believe it. Even though they were in an office just like directly across the street, they had very little real understanding of what the creek was. And so it was really great that Bob invited him down to the water so that he could see for himself or have an experience of being on the creek.
Yeah, the Bay Conservation Development Commission, we were fortunately, we predated them. This harbor was here before the Bay Conservation Development Commission was formed, so we didn't have any trouble getting a permit. But they still consider us intruders on the water. And I can understand that because, they can't open up areas to human settlement, the bay areas. But on the other hand, I think we're the greatest benefit this creek has had, not only for what we're doing to, the kind of things we talked about, but also the hull bottoms. They're alive with creatures. So we're not an onus on the creek at all. On the contrary, we're a great benefit to it.
That was Bob Isaacson and Ginny Stearns. Join us next week when we'll hear stories from Rosie Ortiz of Mission Boricua. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the stuff we do besides the podcast. Find the 70-plus episodes on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If that happens to be Apple Podcasts and you have a minute to spare, please rate and review the show for us. Send comments or suggestions to storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.